William Wallace, a Scottish military leader of the 13th century, was neither a king nor held titles, yet he became a symbol of resistance when Scotland faced the threat of English conquest. His name still sparks debate, inspires, and echoes as a cry for freedom. In this video, you'll learn why England invaded Scotland, how a simple knight without an army sparked a rebellion against Edward I, how Wallace became the guardian of the kingdom, and why his reign was short-lived. Who betrayed him? How did his life end? And why is he remembered as a hero centuries later? This is a story of courage, solitude, and strength of spirit. Leave your ideas for new stories in the comments and subscribe to the channel. Sleep stories are released daily. Get comfortable, we're starting. The story of William Wallace begins not with battles, uprisings, or feats, but in the small village of Elderslie, in western Scotland, near Paisley. Around 1270, a boy was born into the family of a modest yet respected knight, a child whose destiny would alter the course of his nation's history. The exact number of children in the family remains unknown, but according to legend, William had brothers. His father, possibly Malcolm or Alan Wallace, served as a vassal to a local lord, a man of modest means but influence, who ensured his sons received a knightly education, mastery of weapons, horseback riding, reading Latin, and knowledge of church canons. In those days, noble boys began their training early, around 7 or 8 years old. They were sent into the service of noble feudal lords, where they became squires before earning their knightly status. William grew up without luxury, but without want, absorbing from childhood the idea of Scotland as a land of free people, where kings were chosen by ancient custom, not by right of conquest. William heard tales of great clans, independent Highlanders, and the tradition that the land belonged to those who lived on it. But at that time, dark clouds were gathering over the north. Around the age of 6, he witnessed the death of King Alexander III, who fell from his horse at night while riding to his wife. This tragedy left Scotland without a direct heir, triggering a struggle for the throne later known as the Scottish Interregnum. Edward I, King of England, seized the opportunity, initially posing as an ally and arbiter in the dispute among claimants. The Scottish barons agreed, hoping for fairness, but Edward demanded recognition of his supreme authority over Scotland. Thus began a gradual subjugation, first through diplomacy, then by the sword. Young Wallace grew up in a world where danger grew slowly. Formally, the country remained independent, but cities filled with English officials and castles with garrisons. Taxes rose, along with the tyranny of sheriffs appointed from London. The people grumbled but stayed silent. Each day grew heavier than the last. Wallace's fate intersected with this reality when, according to legend, he witnessed the brutal treatment of peasants by the English in his youth. One of his relatives, perhaps a brother or uncle, was executed after a conflict with a soldier. It's said that Wallace first took up arms for justice then, striking a guard and fleeing. The historical accuracy of this tale is debated, but it's clear, even as a youth, he felt like an outsider in his own land. where power spoke a foreign tongue and punished more readily than it listened. Wallace received his education in monasteries, where he likely mastered Latin and French, the language of the nobility of that time. This made him not only a warrior, but also a man capable of persuasion and reflection. These skills later played a key role in his leadership. As a teenager, according to chronicles, he traveled across Scotland visiting Dundee, Perth, and the English border. These journeys, necessary for his knightly training, included guarding caravans and participating in skirmishes. He saw poverty, uprisings, and growing hatred, understanding that anger was brewing, yet no one dared to strike first. The first major clash was not of his choosing. In 1296, when Wallace was about 26, Edward I invaded Scotland. He captured Berwick, massacring thousands of civilians, then crushed the army at Dunbar, arrested King John Balliol, and took him to England along with symbols of independence, including the Stone of Destiny. Scotland became a dependent territory. For many, this was the end, but for Wallace, it was the beginning. Chronicles first mention him as a participant in attacks on English officials. Not yet a commander of an army, but no longer an ordinary man, he set out on a path from which there was no return, shaping himself into a fighter for justice, seeking no glory, but unable to tolerate the humiliation of his people. After the death of Alexander III, Scotland sank into a precarious balance. His only heir was his granddaughter Margaret, daughter of the Norwegian king, who was barely 4 years old. The nobility recognized her as queen, but she died of illness on the Orkney Islands in 1290 during her journey to Scotland. Without a monarch, the country became vulnerable. There were about 13 claimants to the throne, and to avoid war, the barons turned to Edward I as an arbiter. He agreed, but demanded that the claimants acknowledge him as their overlord. In 1292, the weak John Balliol was appointed king, but England's control over Scotland grew. Edward interfered in courts, overturned decisions, and summoned nobles to London. Balliol's resistance, including an alliance with France, provoked Edward's wrath, leading to an open invasion in 1296. Edward captured Berwick, orchestrating a massacre, 7,000 to 10,000 dead, and triumphed at Dunbar. Balliol abdicated and was imprisoned, and the Stone of Destiny was taken to England. Edward divided the country into districts, appointing English officials, sheriffs, and governors. Garrisons occupied cities. Laws and traditions were replaced with foreign ones. Taxes increased, harvests were requisitioned, and resistance was met with imprisonment or exile. Even the nobility lost titles for descent. The country lived in fear, but whispers of rebellion began in villages and taverns. In the spring of 1297, Scotland was fully under English control. William Heselrigg, the cruel and confident sheriff of Lanark, became the catalyst for the uprising. He arrested Marion Braid Fute, possibly Wallace's wife or a close woman, for aiding rebels or refusing to submit. Wallace tried to negotiate, but failing, stormed the castle at night with a band of 10 to 30 men. Hazelrig was killed, marking the first major success. A reward was offered for Wallace, but he fled into the forests, launching a guerrilla war with attacks on patrols and convoys. Peasants, outcast soldiers, and minor nobles, including Sir Andrew Murray, fighting in the north, joined Wallace. In the summer of 1297, their bands operated in Clydesdale and Stirling, forcing the English to retreat. The capture of Scone, where Justiciar William Ormsby fled, bolstered his reputation as a defender. Wallace's letters, written in the name of Scotland, called lords to fight, and his name became a symbol of hope. In September 1297, the armies clashed at Stirling. The English army, 9,000 to 12,000, under John Warrenne, outnumbered the Scots, 6,000 to 8,000 in cavalry. But Wallace and Murray used the narrow bridge over the River Forth. Letting a third of the enemy cross, they attacked, trapping the English in a deadly snare. Panic and crowding led to a defeat, 3,000 to 5,000 dead, though Murray was mortally wounded. The victory inspired Scotland, and Wallace entered key cities. In December 1297, Wallace became Guardian of Scotland in the name of the imprisoned Balliol. He coordinated resistance, but the economy faltered, and the barons wavered. Deciding to strike, he raided northern England in 1298, devastating Cumberland and Northumberland. This caused panic in England, forcing Edward I to return and muster an army. In July 1298, Edward, with seasoned knights and Welsh archers, crushed Wallace at Falkirk. Archers disrupted the schultrons, and cavalry finished the flanks. The Scots lost thousands, and Wallace barely escaped. Barons blamed him for the defeat, and he relinquished his authority, passing it to Bruce and Cummin. Wallace retreated into obscurity, seeking allies in France and Rome without success. Returning in 1304, he fought in the mountains, but in 1305, Sir John Menteith betrayed him to the English. Wallace was captured and taken to London. On August 23, 1305, a court in Westminster sentenced Wallace to be hanged, drawn, and quartered for treason, which he denied, asserting he never swore allegiance to Edward. Dragged through the streets, hanged, disemboweled, and quartered, his body parts were sent to various cities, yet his execution only strengthened his legend. Robert the Bruce restored independence at Bannockburn in 1314, drawing on Wallace's spirit. His name lives on in ballads, a monument in Stirling, and the film Braveheart, 1995, reminding us that freedom is a choice, not a gift. Friends, if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel. Your support isn't just a click, it's a chance to keep these myths alive for thousands. Though we may never meet, your like and subscription make these stories resonate. Share ideas for new stories in the comments. What heroes, gods, or legends do you want to hear? Your suggestions inspire us to create content that sparks imagination. Thank you for being with us, and see you in the next story.